Today's episode is brought to you in part by soundgirls.org, working to provide a network for women and non-binary people working in the professional audio industry. Soundgirls provides an opportunity to meet and network with other industry professionals, creating a strong support network while simultaneously providing the tools, knowledge, and support to further your career. Head over to soundgirls.org and become a member today.
What's happening, roadies? This is Tiffany Hendren.
This is Chris Adamson.
What's happening, roadies? This is Tana Douglas, and you're listening to Roadie Free Radio.
What's up, roadies? My name is Larry Milburn, and this is Roadie Free Radio, your VIP pass to meet and greet the stars behind the scenes of the music and film business. All right. What is happening, roadies? Welcome to episode 160. 160, man. How did we get here? I don't know, but I want to welcome you. This is your host, Larry Milburn. I'm coming at you from a barn in Northwest Connecticut. Our guest this week is the first official female roadie, Miss Tana Douglas. Very, very excited to share this interview with her, with you, if that makes any sense. How are you guys? How's it going? It's nice to have you here in the community. If you're new to the show, I want to personally thank you for stopping by and checking us out. This is the show that takes you behind the scenes of the music and film industry. We focus on the live touring pro, but hey, man, we'll talk to anybody who's out there doing what they do. We got composers, we got photographers, we got who else we got, guys? We got film editors. Try to focus on the music stuff, but you know, we take them all, and we appreciate everybody sharing their stories, their inspiring stories with all of us to further the cause of shining a light backstage. Anyway, back to the happy birthday stuff. We got Tony Roger Fishman from Telefunken and Mary Broadbent. Happy birthday to all of you. At the time of this recording, I have not gone to Tony's birthday up at Telefunken yet, but I will be going. In fact, it's tomorrow night. That doesn't make any sense to you guys, depending on when you listen to this episode, but I'm excited to get up to Telefunken again. Always love going up there to visit those folks. I mentioned it once before, Charlie Karp, the late guitarist, singer-songwriter. Charlie used to play for Buddy Miles and a bunch of other people. He's jammed with Keith Richards. You might know who Keith is from a small band called the Rolling Stones. There is a documentary coming out about Charlie, and there is a scholarship. And I want to read to you some of the information about the Charlie Karp Memorial Fund. So here we go. The Charlie Karp Memorial Fund is administered by Fairfield County's Community Foundation. The fund's mission is to identify and showcase a promising singer, musician, songwriter, or composer between the ages of 12 and 28, studying or residing in Connecticut. The recipient will receive a $1,000 cash prize, professional career mentoring, and guidance by industry professionals, a featured appearance in Westport's Levitt Pavilion for the Performing Arts Summer Concert Series, and professional recording of their work at Carriage House Studios and Horizon Music Studio. If you guys are interested in this, and I think you should be, head over to charliekarp.com and look up the Charlie Karp Memorial Fund page, and you'll learn more about this. It's a super cool thing. Speaking of super cool things that super cool friends are doing, I have received my copy of John Kane's. You know who John is. He's been on the show several times. Author John Kane, music lover. Here it is, The Last Seat in the House, The Story of Hanley Sound by John Kane, with a foreword by Ken Lopez. This book has been endorsed by Steve Katz, Wavy Gravy, Barry Tashian, Robert Nightbob, you know him, I'm not even going to try to say his last name, Robert Nightbob, you know him, and Stanley Miller, CEO of Sound Motions, Inc. Guys, this book is incredible, man. I've not dug into it yet. I've got a few other things on my list before I can start reading about Bill. As you know, he was episode 50, if you want to head back and check that out. This is an incredible book. It is not just the story of Hanley Sound, but also about the evolution of PA systems, live sound reinforcement. A lot of great stuff in this book. So check it out. It's in the show notes. You can grab yourself a copy. Very, very cool. Also have to give a shout out to Shure microphones. I am super excited. Shure Microphones has sent me a couple of goodies to test out, and I cannot wait. I use Rode microphones in my filmmaking gear, in my filmmaking career life. I've used Rode mics, the Rode Video Mic Pro. It's on everybody's camera. Cool. That's great. That's fine. But you know what? I'm always trying to bring a little rock and roll to my filmmaking world. And when I found out that Shure makes an on-camera mic, I had to check it out. And they were kind enough to send me one. So thank you. It is the VP83F. It's got a built-in SD card slot, so you can record, you can do dual sound recording. It's got a lot of cool features, a headphone jack built in. So this could very well replace my Rode Video Mic Pro. I hope it does, to be quite honest, because this thing is a tank. You know, something coming from Shure is going to last forever. Speaking of tanks, they also sent me the MVI digital audio interface that works with your Mac, your PC, your iPhone, iPod, iPad. Can't wait to try this thing out as a little compact DAW, basically. And it's built like a tank. I haven't even taken it out of the box yet, but the box is about as heavy as the microphone box. So thank you, Shure. Going to be doing some videos on that. Speaking of video, guys, man, it's been a while since I put up a video on YouTube. I'm just backlogged on stuff. I still have to get to my NAMM videos and Endorse Expo videos. I've been on the road. I've been traveling. I've been working, making that money. That's what I got to do. Listen, folks, would you like to learn about live sound and mixing from someone who's been the sound engineer for some of the most popular names in music? Does that sound good to you? Well, check it out. Mixing Music Live is an introductory course on live sound and mixing. The course was created by Michelle Pettinato, who has had a career as a touring concert sound engineer for nearly 30 years. Michelle's worked with Gwen Stefani, Goo Goo Dolls, Styx, Melissa Etheridge, Adam Lambert, and many, many more. If you want to check out more about Michelle, head over to our SoundCloud page and check out episode 153. You can learn all about Michelle there. But listen, she has taken all of her experience and knowledge that she has gained over the years and broken it down to the essentials you need to get out there and start mixing. Now, registration for Mixing Music Live is only open for a limited time. It's from February 20th until midnight, March 5th. Right now, it is open, okay? February 20th, it opened. It closes at midnight, March 5th. Michelle is kind enough to offer listeners of Roadie Free Radio a 25% discount. 25% discount, kids. It's a big savings. You got to check it out. February 20th until midnight, March 5th. Use the code ROADIE2, that's the number 2, so that's ROADIE2 for a 25% discount over at Mixing Music Live. Again, there is a link for that in the show notes at the website. Check it out. Have you taken your Tour Health Research Initiative survey yet, people? Have you done it? Head over to tourhealth.org. Take the survey. Give these guys the information that they need to get you the help that you need while you're out on the road. Listen, while you're out on the road, don't forget, sometimes you got to take care of your beard, right? Sometimes you wake up in the morning off the bus, your beard's a damn mess, and you gotta clean it up. Well, check out Show Pro Beard Co., the good folks over there, my buddy Chris Wilson, who happens to be a live audio engineer. He and his wife, they have created their very own unique formula of beard balm that not only performs well in terms of health and nourishment, but hey, it also provides the control, shine, and pleasant aroma that any bearded professional would appreciate. These are non-waxy, all-natural beard balms that will leave your beard soft, smooth, and nourished. Choose from a variety of natural-smelling scents like Home Sweet Home, Morning Wood, Through the Woods, Chain Motor Oil, and of course, they've got Original Unscented. Use the code ROADIE to get 20% off your entire order. That's ROADIE to get 20% off your entire order. All right, so let's get to today's guest. It's Miss Tana Douglas, who has been crowned the first official female roadie. She started out in 1973, folks. She was about 16 years old, actually. Let me check that. 16 years old as a backline tech for AC/DC. Incredible. In a short time, she moved right on up to front of house for them for a very short stint before heading into lighting for a major Australian promoter and completed In quick succession, several tours with international acts such as Santana, Suzi Quatro, Neil Diamond, David Essex, and Leo Sayer, and Status Quo. She did all that before she turned 18 years old. She then moved on to TASCO, a production company in London, and that relationship would last her several years and include working for such artists as The Who, Ozzy Osbourne, Whitesnake, The Police, Elton John, Iggy Pop, and Johnny Halliday. She's been around. She knows what she's doing. Ultimately, she ended up in logistics. She moved to LA, where she currently lives. This is a great story. She's got a new book called Loud. It is out. I've got a link to it. You can check it out on Amazon right now for your Amazon Kindle. I think the hard copies are coming out in the next couple of weeks. Check me if I'm wrong on that. I will put updates and be promoting helping Tana promote her book as well. I've got to give a special shout out and thanks to Grace Culture Marketing and Red Bull for the opportunity to sit in their offices and do this interview while I was in Los Angeles. And yes, I was using my Telefunken M80s for this recording. So thank you to Telefunken as well. So that's it. That's what we got for you today. I really hope you like today's episode. Don't forget to check out Michelle Petinato's course, Mixing Music Live. Stay tuned for all sorts of good stuff coming up. I promise it's going to be awesome. But in the meantime, here we go. Let's get to today's episode with my guest, Tana Douglas.
Hit it. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie.
You're on a deadline. Did you get the deadline for the book done?
I did. I hit send last night.
Oh, how'd that feel?
Oh, it was a relief and nerve-wracking. But you know what? It's out of my hands now, and I just deal with photos from this point.
Yeah.
We're going through thousands of photos.
How is that? Let's just backtrack for a second. Tell me the experience of putting these memories and these thoughts of yours and these time and places, these compartments of your life on paper and what that's been like. And of course, sifting through the photos and looking back at yourself and whatnot. Tell me about that.
It's cathartic, I'd say, would be the start of it. It's cheaper than therapy. You actually get paid to do it, so that's good. And it's interesting, it's brings up a lot of things that you obviously don't, think of day to day and that you don't remember, and some things you don't want to remember. But it also brings up some great stuff as well, So the story that I'm telling is covering 3 decades, so 70s, 80s, 90s. It stops at the millennium. And because it's my career evolving with the actual industry at the same time. So I think, that was a good stopping place because, from that point on, everything just boom, So I think, 3 decades was enough.
Yeah, it's a lot
to deal with.
Those are 3 decades a lot of people don't remember also.
That's right. That was a little tricky at points.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Different versions of the same story. Hang on a minute. Wait, what?
Yeah. Did you reach out to a lot of old friends, people you hadn't spoken with, to try to get some things accurate or just to pinpoint some things? And how was that?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to because, it's like the old eyewitness report, 3 people see the same thing 3 totally different ways. And then you've got to think back and go, yeah, but how was that person back then? Okay, I'm not going to go with that version.
Right.
But, mostly it's been good. What was really difficult was the touring schedule. That was just chaotic because you're trying to put it in a flow for a book. Whereas, in the middle of like a tour stops, say you do Europe, and then between Europe and America, there's like a month off. So you jump on another tour and do something else. But you can't just slap that in the middle of a chapter, because it's weird,
Right.
So that was tricky. That was really tricky.
Yeah.
And it's like I worked a lot and it all came flooding back. Yeah.
That's awesome. What a cool experience, though, to sort of, even for you, even if nobody read it, right, just to encapsulate all this stuff in one place.
It is, I'd recommend it to anyone, it's like, and it's kind of validation in a way, because especially, because I've tied it in with the evolution of the industry. So, I was there when, park hands were steel, and sound desks were aluminum frames, so, and the evolution, to go through that evolution with both sound and lighting and then, staging and production and video and stuff, it was quite amazing, even, going from ground support to chain motors. I mean, everything changed so quickly.
Yeah.
And to just like fly along with all that change, it was amazing, really.
Sure.
Didn't have time to think about it at the time. You just hung on and went for it.
Right. And I know the book stops and around the millennial there, but or the millennium, whatever.
Millennium.
It is. Thank you, millennium. But you definitely came along at a time. I mean, probably like 65 to let's say 70 would have been the real Wild West with all of this, but 71 certainly, particularly in Australia, right? I mean, you were just probably figuring it out, but then very quickly, as you said, you probably were there for the big change when it became a business, it became an industry.
Yeah, I think a stroke of luck that I had was. I started in Australia, and within a year I was working for this new band that had just started, AC/DC. And I went from doing their backline to doing their front of house sound. And they moved so quickly. I only spent just over a year with them, but it was amazing what we went through in that year for the evolution of that band and me, because I was just learning and keeping up, It's like it was frantic, we do 14 shows a week sometimes. I mean, it was astronomical. It was just no stop. It didn't stop.
What year is this now?
That's when they first started with the Bon Scott lineup. It was 74, early 74 through to the end of 75. That's when I was with them. And then that's when I found out, because I got jumped over from backline to front of house sound, which is difficult enough for a band like that because they're so loud, but the equipment was so lacking, and there was no one to teach me. It was like I went and picked one up one day, and then they said, "Oh, by the way, you're a PA, and they've got, "Oh, by the way, that's your new job." And it's like, what?
Wow.
Does this thing come with a book? No. Okay.
Right. Who made that call?
Management. I mean, the band always makes a call. AC/DC always makes a call, but they said they wanted a PA. So we went and got our own PA. I didn't realize that meant that because I was there, I would then become their front of house sound engineer and doing monitors from the front of house as well.
Of course.
Nightmare.
Right. Of course.
But, it was good. And it was only when they finally hit the level that within a year of full production, and going to England, that I decided, you know what, I need to jump off. I need to learn stuff. If I'm going to keep doing this, someone's got to teach me. You can only learn so much on your own, and I was on my own.
Right, yeah. But why not say, well, this is a great gig. They're blowing up. The guys, let me step back from front of house and just let me go back to backline for a bit and still kind of learn. Like, why leave the whole...
Well, because I had a backline crew then.
Okay.
So I would have had to take someone's job.
Gotcha.
Or, I mean, that to me I didn't really think. I mean, to me it was all about growing.
Yeah.
And knowledge,
Right.
And I wanted to go somewhere where I could be taught, and so within like 2 weeks of leaving AC/DC, I was working for the main promoter in Australia who had his own production company for sound and lights.
Right.
And it was Clare Brothers had left a system there for Blood, Sweat and Tears in the year before in 73, or 2 years then before in 73. And I looked at that and went, I don't know if I want to do sound again. And they needed a lighting person, and it was like, well, I'd said no to AC/DC actually. Said, well, you could do lights for us.
Right.
And I thought, oh. But then I met the people, the crew that they had put together for lighting for this production company, and I went, you know what? I can learn from these people. So there I was comfortable,
right.
And I could learn. And I did, and in a matter of a year, I did like 7 major international tours, with the main promoter in Australia. And then by then it was just like, I got to go. I got to see the rest of the world.
Let's back up for a sec. You've been confirmed, let's say, had confirmation that you wear the mantle of the first female roadie.
That's what I keep getting told, and that's what keeps getting put in books. Mm-hmm. So that's why I decided that maybe I should do a little research and then maybe tell my own story so it's a little more accurate, as opposed to just someone who sees glimpses of me and shoves it in their book that's coming out,
Right.
So, yeah.
Has it been contended?
No.
Have you had anyone come out and say, hey, man?
No, there's been no sparring.
Okay.
There's early on, like the Wings tour in Australia, before I even left Australia, the Shoko crew, they didn't know of any other women. You know, Bill Graham's crew at the time with Santana, when I did Santana, he'd never seen another woman. And I figure if Bill Graham hasn't seen another woman, then there probably isn't one because, you know, he would know. And then with the English crews, they hadn't seen any women as well. And then, you know, when I left Australia, after I got my dad to sign my passport, because I was still only 17, I went to England, and I didn't come across another woman for years. You know, now there's a couple that in my research that I've found. There was a girl that worked for a company called Super Mick Lights, but I'd already been there like 4 years when that happened. There was a lady from Rainbow Theatre, which was like a good venue in England and London in Finsbury Park, and when that venue closed, they took the lights out and made a lighting company. But neither of those women liked touring.
Right.
So they worked in the companies, but they didn't like touring.
Okay.
So it was 1981 before I found anyone who was actually another Australian girl who'd come over with a friend of mine. So I got them both a job and off we went.
How does that make you feel? I mean, let's say that you know, it's been verified. You are the first female roadie. Yeah, I hear you, man. When you, as you've been writing the book, or you set out to write the book, and you think about it, and you meet people, you know this industry, you know the changes that have happened, you know all this stuff. Like just on a pure feeling level, you know, how's it make you feel?
It's interesting because at the time it never really occurred to me or never meant anything. I was too busy trying to not be obvious by being a girl. You know, I was dressing like the boys. I was working like the boys. I was drinking with the boys, you know, and it was just like if I figured my success was how I fitted in, not how I stood out as a girl. Right. So that was my focus, you know. So
right. And you must be a damn good drinker. You must have been.
Oh, yeah.
Because you hung, these aren't like, you know, fun little pop bands. No, I mean, this is the Who's crew.
Yeah.
Right. AC/DC. I mean, my God.
I had good teachers.
Right.
See, I was learning the whole time.
Right. It's not just about hanging lights and prepping a stage, kids.
No, I always joke that I was raised by wolves.
Right.
It pretty much was, you know.
Yeah.
Nice wolves. Hollywood wolves. But, yeah.
So you've accepted it. It's cool. Do you find it cool?
You know, I find it interesting. What I find cool is seeing other girls doing it, other women out there.
Yeah.
Girls, women, having done it now for a long time. You know, that to me is nice. And it's kind of a little bit of validation in a way, you know. I'm not taking credit for anything, but, you know, it's nice to see that I didn't shut the entire industry down saying we're never going to have another woman ever again. She was horrible.
Right. You kind of kicked the door open.
So yeah, hopefully that's what it was. And you know, I wasn't always the easiest person, and I would stand up. It's like, oh hell no, that's not happening. You know, so hopefully, you know, I made it that they realized women weren't a pushover, and that we were talented and we could do the job as well as anyone else.
Yep.
And, you know, in a leader position, which I had, you know, eventually, it's, you know, she can lead without being a bitch, you know. Yep. If she's being a bitch, there's a reason, you know. So, you know, that was it. I mean, there was always a little resistance from someone in a corner somewhere, but you know what?
Sure.
Who cares?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I'm sure you must have, I mean, it still happens today. I'm sure you must have gotten, particularly back then, that initial, you know, sort of stereotypical thing from the guys who are like, oh, you must be in the back office or you must work with management or something like that, right? Immediately. When's the sound guy showing up? You're like, I am the fucking sound guy.
Absolutely. You know? Absolutely.
Or do you need help lifting this case? You know, that sort of thing. Which,
the only time I've ever been injured on the job was when someone who didn't know me came. There was a company called Light and Sound Design, you know, it's out in Newbury Park here in California, and I was lowering their truss sections, which were full of lamps, but it's all a balance thing,
Right.
So I was walking it back and this tall guy came running out and went, "Oh my God, I'll help you." And of course, him being tall, he grabbed one side and it twisted and all the weight came down onto me then. And of course, that did my back in. And it's like, please don't help me.
Right. Right.
As I'm lying on the floor in severe pain, It's like, no, we can be strong. We can be smart. I mean, it's about smart mostly. It's all balance. It's math. It's balance. It's amazing, actually, the things that, you can destructure it down to.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Between drinks.
Right. Between pints.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's go back. Pre-1971, where in Australia?
Pre-1971.
Yeah.
Why do we pick that number?
That's when you started, right?
73.
73 you started?
74, yeah.
Oh.
73, 74.
Perhaps I hadn't had quite enough coffee when I read
There you go.
the byline. All right, so 74 you started. All right.
Well, 74 I was with AC/DC already. So
Right.
it was probably late 73 that I started actually working for bands. And before that, I was a runaway. I was a runaway child. I ran away from home at just 15, ran off to a festival.
So what part of Australia did you grow up in?
I was in Brisbane when I ran away, and then there was a festival called the Nimbin Festival, which was Australia's version of We All Missed Woodstock. We're going to have this.
Yeah.
And I'd missed Woodstock. It was like, damn, I'll go, so... And I hooked up with a group that was there for a guy called Philippe Petit, who was the tightrope walker.
Okay.
He's the guy who walked across the Twin
Oh,
Towers.
yeah.
Well, he was doing a cultural exchange thing. The Australian Council had paid for him to come out and be a part of this Nimbin Festival. But afterwards, because he always did these commando things, he decided he was going to walk across the pylons for the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So I found out about this and went, oh, count me in. So I went down to Sydney with them instead of going back into the rainforest and growing pot. I went down to Sydney and sort of hung with these guys and watched this whole thing happening. It was like, my God, and they're talking about they got blueprints of the bridge and they're getting like steel bars, for his balance pole, and they're talking about, wind factors and ratings. And I'm like, had no idea what they were talking about, but I really wanted to. So I jumped in both feet with that.
So how old are you with that? You're 15? This is right when you ran away from home?
Yeah.
A big family or small family?
A totally broken family.
Totally broken.
Just scattered.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
so it was
family.
like...
No family to speak of.
No future here. I got to go out on my own.
Absolutely. It's
all
like, this is not working for me.
Damn, so you're a 15-year-old kid, you run away and you start working for the tightrope guy. That's amazing.
Petite, yeah. So, and then...
How long were you with him?
Oh, just for that one thing. He just did that one thing and boom, back to France to start working on the Twin Towers job. That was his next job. Yeah.
Damn.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
Yeah. So I ended up, while I was in Sydney, after a bit of wandering about, went back to Sydney. And,
what'd you do? Where were you living? Where were you sleeping?
Oh, I was a hippie. I was just wandering around the rainforest, growing pot and stuff and sailing trimarans up the Great Barrier Reef. And, I mean, it was outrageous. It's kind of the first part of the book. It's like, hang on, it's been how many years?
Right. Yeah.
How old is she? Oh my God, she's finally 17.
We're halfway through the book. She finally started working for
It's not that bad, but yeah. So accidentally I ended up helping a band load their truck because we were trying to get one of the girls in our flat a free ride back to Melbourne. It was like, we can get rid of her this way.
My God.
So it was like, I'll help. It's like, well, if we get loaded out of here tonight, she can come with the crew. Otherwise, forget it. It was like, I'll help. And literally that's how it started. It was like kind of weird. Yeah.
You're throwing cases in the back of a truck to get rid of this girl.
Well, yeah,
and then you just stayed on the truck?
Well, no. She got in the truck. I stayed in Sydney. But, well, they came back, a few weeks later, and they're like,
"What other girls you got here?"
Well, they were actually a crew member short, and they called up and they said, "Do you want to come to the show?" And it was like, "Oh, okay, you want to give us a hand while you're there?" I went, "Oh, okay."
Right, here's $1 for your work.
Yeah, and then I went back with them to Melbourne. So yeah, and then within I think 6 months I was working with AC/DC.
What? Okay,
Yeah.
hold on. I mean, did you have a clue? Did you have any clue? Like, this is how you set up a backline, or is it just like, put the bass cabinet there, put this over there, you watch? I mean, what do you?
Well, what had happened in my hippie days, I learned how to string a guitar, tune a guitar, play a guitar, and percussion stuff. And when I was a kid, I'd played drums in a marching band. These are all like really good things for a resume.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's great. You keep telling me you're a hippie, and I'm looking at this vision of you here as like this punk badass. If people could see your boots, I mean, you don't want to catch the wrong end of those on your shin. I can tell you that.
I'm still both.
Are you?
Yeah. I'm still both.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a bit of an oxymoron.
You can take the girl out of the rainforest, but you can't take the rainforest out of the girl, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But and I rolled a really good joint. So,
sure.
These things, and from that
you're done, hired.
From that first loadout, I guess, for want of a better term, of me trying to get this girl a free ride back down to Melbourne, they showed me how to roll a cable and they let me pack the drums away. I was in.
Damn.
To be honest, everyone started that way.
Sure.
Back then.
Sure.
Everyone. Probably still to this day a bit. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, what can you do? Learn. Just keep your eyes open, watch, see how it's done right.
Yeah.
And then do it.
So let me ask you this. So, because there's a fine line, I would imagine. You had some other skills in terms of knowing how to string a guitar and like be around the equipment side, right? But that rolling a joint, being around bands, the other side of that line is being a groupie. So did you, were you mistaken a lot as a groupie? You know what I mean? Or did people think that first and you're like, hey, man.
That was kind of the other thing that a reason for sort of getting away from AC/DC, working for a band directly, because at the time the scene in Australia was like pub gigs everywhere, but they'd hold like 1,000, 1,500 people.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you do 10 of those a week. You know what I mean? So. But yeah, you get heckled. You get drunk yobs. Yeah, it's a fucking Sheila.
Right.
It's like, oh God.
Right.
That's so original.
Right. I imagine too, it's got to be an interesting dynamic to be part of the road crew, be a woman, part of the road crew. And then, but you're also rolling with the groupies, not meaning you're traveling with them, but like, they're part of the thing. So you're both looking at each other across the aisle.
That was always awkward for me because that was a big thing for me. I mean, some of those girls are fabulous. Don't get me wrong. You know what? They're great girls and what they do is totally their business, but it's just not me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Never has been, never would be.
Yeah.
So I was really sensitive to it, you know, and if someone called me a groupie, I'd get really, really pissed. You know what I mean? And it's like the first big festival we did with AC/DC, 20,000 people, and it's like, I jump up, heading towards the stage, throw the band in the dressing room, and I'm charging towards the stage, and the security guy's like, whoa, 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 little lady. Oh, God. Oh, God, here we go. And I've gone, like, I was so young then and so naive. It's like, no, it's all right. I'm with the band.
Right.
And this big gorilla of a man's like, well, then you best go find them, hadn't you? Because you're not over here. You are not coming here. No, I'm the roadie. You don't understand. And he's like, no, get the hell out of here, And it was only because one of the stage managers for the festival saw it and he yelled down from the stage, no, mate, seriously, she's their roadie, And then he grudgingly let me up. It's like, oh, for God's sake,
Wow.
My word means nothing here. Hello.
Right.
And, that happened a lot.
I was going to say, I'm sure that wasn't the first and last time.
And that was, I think, again, a big point for me to move over to like a production company where I'm kind of safer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by a crew.
Right.
We all travel together. There's more of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people know. It's like, oh, it's so-and-so. The production's arrived and we're doing it for whatever bands are playing that day. So we're in charge. So, again, it gives you a validation kind of thing,
Yep.
So that's kind of why I kept away from working for bands most of my time.
Just to seal up your AC/DC time, before we move on, because I like to ask, folks that have been on the inside as a band is exploding before they implode,
Right.
before the eventual implosion comes.
Right.
What was that like to watch their,
It was amazing,
their rise?
actually. It was amazing. We all lived in a house together. And I was the only girl, obviously, living in the house. Angus had a girlfriend who was sort of come and go, but it was great because 24/7 we're all living together. So we're having breakfast together, we're smoking together, that we rehearsed in the house. So it was a full immersion, which also was a bit of a shock having just come out of the rainforest. Right. But I adapted. I'm a bit of a chameleon.
Yeah.
So, but it was an amazing time, and it's funny, Malcolm, before he died, he was asked, what's your favourite time in your career? And he's gone, Lansdowne Road was some of my happiest days. That was the house on Lansdowne Road.
Yeah.
And you know what? That was some of my happiest days too.
Yeah.
So it's...
Well, for you were 17? Or still 15?
Well, I ended up being
16-ish then.
17. I was 17 when I left them, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's still super innocent. You're in, your
absolutely.
teen years and figuring it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did some of those older guys who were on the crew, older, they were probably 22 years old.
Everyone
right,
was older.
Right, yeah, exactly. Were they helpful? Did they show you?
Well, I think the other thing that why AC/DC really helped my career is they're so family orientated, and there's such a thing. So many people have gone, they're such a close, tight lock. They don't trust anyone. They don't let anyone in. And when you're in, you're protected. And so they only hire people who they trust. And so I never had problems from the crew members. Or obviously never the band because they hired me, So it was always like, so that was good.
Yeah.
But it was dealing with the audiences that was really tough.
Right.
So,
but I mean, like some of the older crew guys, did they start showing you the ropes? Like they could see you're there to try to prove yourself and like, all right, well, here's how you do this.
I had a mentor from the very beginning, from when I was in Sydney before I'd moved to Melbourne and ended up with AC/DC. And he was just amazing. And he was one of the most respected road managers in Australia at the time, and for a long time after that, 30 years after. His name was Swampy Wayne Jarvis. And Swampy's his nickname and Wayne Jarvis was his real name, but everyone called him Swampy. And again, we both worked in London together afterwards and stuff, but with him giving me a nod and introducing me to some of the main crew people in Australia, then the ones who would be prone to give you a hard time weren't always game to, because I had the A-team behind me, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they were teaching me, which was the other thing of get me somewhere where I can learn more.
Sure.
So it's all an evolution, And again, and just right when I started with that production company for the promoter, Paul Dainty down there, was when everything changed. That's when the sound system started coming in. That's when the lighting started changing. And, several of the tours, whether it was Santana, Neil Diamond, we did all outdoor with Patrick Stansfield. That's when I first met Patrick Stansfield. He became a great supporter for me.
Yeah.
So from those very early days, from that rash of international tours I did before I left the country, I got lifelong friends out of, Shoko people, Stansfield. It's, British people, delicate production people who weren't doing delicate production, but they were shortly afterwards. TASCO people who weren't doing TASCO, but by the time I arrived in London a couple of years later, they were.
Right.
So there was a job,
Right.
So, it was just, I think the timing, I feel I was lucky with the timing. People say it wasn't luck, it was really hard work.
Yeah, of course.
And it's well, okay, I'll take both.
Yeah.
It was both.
Last AC/DC question.
Okay.
And then we're gonna move on.
Okay.
Because we go to London after that, right?
Absolutely.
We go to England. You're standing in front of house, first gig with them as the front of house.
Right.
Hands on the faders. Tell me how you felt.
Why me? The backline was so easy, apart from wrangling Angus. But that was just a brief second of nervousness, and it was, I knew them.
Right.
I knew what they wanted.
Yep.
I knew their signals, their movements, their look in their faces, if they were happy or they weren't happy. So I think that, again, was the reason why they wanted me to do it, because they didn't have to retrain somebody. You know, I already knew where they were coming from, you know.
Right.
I just had to, and I'd been given a crash course, very crash course, one day, one afternoon, maybe a couple of hours, to be honest, on this desk thing, you know.
Right.
And so it's just, that's what you do.
Yeah.
You know, and there's, you know, a little bit of feedback happened, stopped quickly, you know, figured it out.
Yep.
But again, it was a basic desk.
Right.
You know, there was
Right.
only, I think, 12, 16 channels maybe.
Yeah.
You know, so how wrong can you go?
Yeah, right.
Really wrong. But luckily we didn't.
Right.
And they were happy with it. You know,
Right.
they were good. You know, it was a struggle with Bond's vocals, obviously, getting through that wall of Marshalls with such a small system. It was only a 3-way system originally. Then we expanded it to a 4-way system. But they could only go so big because we had the bus at the time, that all the gear went in the back of the bus and we went in the front of the bus, which was great because it made it twice as heavy to push when the damn thing broke down. But, you know, so it was restricting. The whole, you know, it was restricting, but I knew them and they knew me.
Yeah.
So it was easy, you know, and people liked it, you know. I mean, when I stopped working sound for them, tons of Australian bands like, come and do our sound, just like you did AC/DC's. No, I don't think so.
How's your hearing?
Fabulous. What?
I haven't heard a question you asked.
Exactly. Are you here? Hello? Are you still here, Larry?
Somewhere. Floating out here somewhere, man. All right. So we leave them behind. You go to work for a production company and you start drifting into the lighting world.
Yeah, they needed a lighting person. And I knew most of the people on their crew already from already working shows locally. And lighting was what they needed. They didn't need a sound person because there was also a couple of sound companies that were starting up right at that time. So there seemed to be a ton of sound people around. So, and lighting, I mean, can't blame no one wanting to do lighting back then, for Christ's sake. It was it's a bit of a nightmare. You know, you had the genie towers that went up with the steel park hands on them.
Right.
You know, and the individual cable loomed together, you know, and it was like, oh my God. And the dimmer racks were hilarious. It's like, we've got these Strands developed these touring dimmer racks for us, you know, they're designed for us to tour. No, they didn't. They just ripped them off the wall of a theatre. The only difference is they're not bolted to the wall of a theatre somewhere.
Right.
They're in wooden crates. This is no. They were like 12 foot high and like 6 foot wide and about, I don't know, 2 foot deep. And it was like, and they came in these like wooden crate things. It was like, oh God.
Oh my God.
And it was like, they looked like these like double wide coffins. You know?
Yeah.
But it was cool because I was learning, you know, and I was learning the same time everyone else was learning.
Right.
Because lighting was going through such a massive change.
Sure.
You know, so every tour that came through had new stuff, different stuff. Wow, this one's got projection, this one's got moving screens, this one's got like, you know, like Diamond, when Neil Diamond came down to Australia, he had this thing called the Mobius. I don't know if anyone's out there's ever heard of the Mobius, but it was like the ugly stepmother of outdoor stages. You know what I mean? And it was like, but you could lift the rig. It wasn't ground supported. You could float a rig on an outdoor venue for like the first time ever in Australia. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And it was amazing. You know, it looked like a big, had this big sombrero. I used to call it the sombrero, you know, because you get it up and then it had this ugly yellow and white stripe like a tent, you know, like a circus tent, hat on it to stop, you know, in case it rained, God forbid. But, you know, it was ugly. It was horrible. But that became my job, you know. So when I was on the Santana tour, they hooked me up with Stansfield because he was also another one of Bill Graham's guys, you know. And I guess no one wanted to do the Mobius. So idiot here is like, I'll do it.
I'll do it. Oh my God.
What is it? Yeah, I don't care. I'll do it just to do another international tour. You know? So, and the Stones had used it the year before. And I ended up breaking their records. Like on the Australian tour, I got it loaded out and set up at least an hour or so more or less time than they did. And they toured the whole States with it. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So that's when Stansfield went, we like this girl.
Yeah. I'm sorry, too. I'm just thinking mid-70s Neil Diamond in the prime, man. That guy must have been phenomenal.
In the prime. What a nice guy. I swear to God. I haven't seen him for a few years, but we stayed in touch with his whole group and stuff, and just such a nice guy.
Yeah.
Such a nice guy. And I mean, it was... It was a whole different version of girls throwing their knickers on stage. It was like people's mums doing it. It was terrifying. I was mortified. It was like, oh my God, look what's happening. And all the crew, and of course Neil and everyone's loving it. And I'm just like, that's someone's mother. And they're all laughing at me. It's like, oh God.
So at this point, though, you haven't left. So your dad hadn't signed your passport.
No.
Good God. So you'd already lived. So we're talking 16 to 17, like a 1 year, year and a half.
Yeah.
You've already lived a gajillion lifetimes.
Yeah, I know.
Well, let's say 15 to 17 because you ran away.
Yes.
And that'll grow you up real quick.
2.5 years. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And then the first contact he gets is, can you sign my passport? It's like, what?
Wow.
Yeah.
And the plan to go to London was... There's just more work. There's more opportunity.
Well, actually, the first offer was through Patrick Stansfield. I keep mentioning his name just because I love him so much. It's unfortunately he's no longer with us. But he was going to, after Neil Diamond, he was going to go back to the States and do the second leg of the Rolling Thunder review with Dylan. So, and he said, you know what, come to the States and I'll put you on the tour. He says, if you get yourself to the States, I'll make sure you got a job on the tour.
Right, you thought Neil Diamond was cool. Where do you come out on this thing?
No, I thought Neil Diamond was way too shiny. They all wear satin and stuff. It was like, I don't know about this. But they were such nice people. They won me over in the end.
Sure.
But yeah, so, I kind of had in my mind set to leave, and it was going to be in... April. It was the beginning of April. March, actually, because that's why I had to get my passport signed. So March was going to be my kickoff time. And then Patrick got hold of me and said, you know what, this tour is going to fail. He says, I don't want you to come out here. He said, I don't know if it'll go much more than a month. And sure enough, it didn't. The second leg, the big documentary that came out about Rolling Thunder Review. Right. It's all the first leg.
Right.
They forgot to mention the second leg fell on its ass. But, it happens. You know. But so I already had in my mind I was leaving. So I went, fuck it, I'll go to England, see what happened, because I'd done more British tours than American tours, So I thought, well, I'm ready to go. Psychologically, I'm ready to go. I'll just go,
Yeah.
So off I went. And I'd worked with a band called Status Quo, which is an English band, which probably people in America probably don't know much about Status Quo. But they've sold like 200 million albums. They're still going, a version of them, you know what I mean? Still mates, love them to death, But I ended up hooking up with them. I mean, we're talking about the fun times and stuff because we're skipping through stuff. There was dark times. But you have to read the book to find that.
Oh, come on.
I mean, I was homeless for a bit. It was freezing cold. I was in Amsterdam going, what the hell am I doing in Amsterdam? Well, you didn't have to get a visa or anything, and you didn't need a round-trip ticket. So, and it's just across the pond to England. Can't be that difficult.
Right. And it's Amsterdam. And you know how to roll a joint. And
I didn't smoke pot by that point. Once I started with AC/DC, I actually stopped smoking pot. So it was funny.
Wow.
But I still rolled a really good joint.
Yeah. Well, once you learn it, it's like riding a bike.
Exactly. So I went to England, thinking that, then if something does come up with the Dylan thing or whatever, then at least I'm halfway there sort of thing,
Right.
So, but I ended up getting working for Quo again, and I ended up with them for like 4 years in all. So, once I started working, it was good. I did a couple of other little things beforehand, a band called Pat Travis. And that was when Nico McBain was drumming with them before he became a heavy metal rock star. But, so, it was, I kind of had to start again a bit in England, which is fine. I expected that, you know. It was hard, because I didn't want people to know I didn't have any money. I didn't have a home. Right. Are we still mid-70s now? We're going up close to the 80s. Yeah, we're 70s, mid-70s. And then, I spent years with Quo. And then, they built their own lighting rig, which I ran for them. And then I transferred they went off the road in 1980. So I took that rig to a production company called TASCO, who'd only ever done sound.
Right.
But now they could do both. So from that, I got to by running the Quo rig for them, I got to be their head lighting person at TASCO. So I didn't actually go back to Quo after that. I stayed with TASCO.
Right.
And then that's, started just touring back to back with that as well.
From Australia to England at that time, tell me some of the differences, sort of production-wise, and, was Australia on the same par with what they were doing in England, right? Or was it like, or once you got to England, it was like, oh, okay, now this is...
No, it was, it was...
And I'm not belittling anything.
No, I totally understand. I mean, just logistically, we were behind. We had to be because it was no one wanted to pay to get all the gear there. You know what I mean? So we had to start making our own. You know what I mean? Which was knockoffs and good knockoffs. And some of those companies still go to this day. But yeah, it was different because there was so many more companies.
Sure.
There was competition. Whereas, you were sort of hanging on by the seat of your pants in Australia, and what can you come up with? Well, we've got this,
Yeah.
But, in England, there was, different companies. So, and also there was bands who had their own production companies like The Who.
Right.
And luckily, I got in with ML Executives, which is The Who's company, and they taught me stuff. And TASCO, I was learning all the time, and it was right when Avo lights first started. I mean, I had one of the first QM500s, it's like, and the Avo racks, before that it was Oldham in England, but Oldham got left in the dust. I mean, Avo was just a brainstorm, you know what I mean? It was just so amazing from the lighting point of view. It was just like, oh my God, look at this.
Right. So were you designing the shows also?
I designed some, but most, I was still learning. I was still learning. So, I was learning how to rig. I was learning electricity. I was crew chief.
Gotcha.
I ran the Dimmer City, So I kind of had enough on my plate. And again, I always had this thing about working for a band directly. I didn't really want to do it.
Okay.
I thought I could just keep moving.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. I mean, it's like putting your eggs in one basket, right? I mean, it's like you never know what's going to happen. Again, we talked about the explosion, but there's always the implosion.
Yeah,
and then, like you said, with Quo, they come off the road. Yeah. Well, then what?
Yeah, for a year,
right?
And it's like, but luckily for that year, I just took, I'm kind of business minded. It's like, I mean, I got into it for the love of music and the knowledge and the safe place to land. It really was a safe, even though it was rough and Wild West and some scary people in those days, right back at the beginning. But I felt safe with them, So I kind of like that camaraderie thing. I didn't want to sort of step out from that too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It kind of made me feel safe, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was still quite young.
And I imagine too, again, mid to late 70s, coming into the 80s, we got super hard drugs.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you lost a lot of people, a lot of friends.
A lot. It's tough being that young and knowing so many dead people,
Yeah.
It's really tough. And it's weird how you adapt to stuff. It's like the normal, But and even through not just drugs, through accidents and stuff, because there was no safety standards. There was none of that, I mean, with Quo, the last year I was with them, we're at Wembley Arena and Empire Pool it was called back then, and our rigger fell from the roof, and literally I sort of heard a thud and felt a whoosh of air and turned around and there's the rigger on the stage, and it's like, fuck, what happened? Sorry. And it's like, I didn't see it, but I felt it because I felt that whoosh, But what do? I get grabbed by the head lighting guy, the designer, and he's gone, we've got to get in that roof and get those steel cables. We're opening the NEC in Birmingham tomorrow night. We can't stop, and that's how it was. You didn't stop. You didn't get everyone take a break, stop. We're going to send someone to, talk you through it and stuff. It was like, hell no. You stepped into the shoes of the person who'd fallen and you kept going.
Right.
It's not that you didn't care for that person because you're getting an ambulance, you're trying to position him so he's, to try and preserve whatever you can for him. He didn't die. He survived, but there was other instances with bus crashes and stages collapsing and lighting rigs falling over where people do die.
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
there was never any, you know, I mean, I got electrocuted, for Christ's sake. I got 3-phase 200 amps, you know. Did I see a doctor? No.
Right.
No, they put me on the bus. And when I finally came to, I focused the lights. I don't remember anything about the show, but I guess I did it. You know? And my hair started turning grey, you know. But it was like, you know, so that's the things that happened. If it didn't kill you, you just kept going.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, what was the question?
Well, shit. It was. I guess really the question was sort of how did you see some of those pitfalls and sidestep that, and you sidestepped it by just moving forward, just keep going. I
Yeah.
mean, your number could have come up at any time. It sounds like, right? But
Yeah.
but you just keep going forward. That's how.
Yeah, and the same thing.
You survived.
Yeah, and the same thing with people who weren't comfortable. There was still people weren't comfortable with a female, you know. So, you know, I kind of found ways to talk to people in a way that even though you're their superior, etc., you don't ever stand on that. You know what I mean? Whereas a lot of production people and tour people and that, like, okay, it's the boss is here. What's he want? Here we go. Bam. You know?
Yeah.
I had to wear kid gloves. You know what I mean? Kid gloves, and never ask someone to do something I wasn't prepared to do myself.
Yep.
You know, and
Yep.
jump in there and show them physically, this is how we should do this, you know,
Right.
that sort of thing, you know.
Right.
And, you know, there was still, you know, I think the only tour I was ever told I couldn't do was Clapton. But I think I dodged a bullet with his problems with women anyway.
Right.
At the time, it was Derek and the Dominoes, and he was like out of his mind.
Yeah, I say those are dark times for him, for sure.
So it was probably, but I don't know if it was him that wasn't comfortable with a woman or tour manager or whoever. I don't know, because I worked with a lot of that crew, but just not on a Clapton tour.
Yeah.
But so apart from that, I was never told no. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Wow.
I think the unique position of running that lighting division of TASCO,
Yep.
then I could pick pretty much most of the tours.
When did you, if you remember, when did you start feeling, or when will you start, okay, Larry, let's get it together. When are you conscious of starting to look around and go, oh, there's more women out here? 2010.
On stage at Lollapalooza.
Right.
Just to jump a decade.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only other woman I ever toured with was an Australian girl, Debbie Vincent. Darling. She's no longer with us anyway. Anymore, sorry, not anyway. But she came over with another person, lighting person from Australia, and Mary Took, who was a good friend of mine. And we put him out on Neil Young. And so he said, well, Debbie does lights too. And that was 1982, 83, 82. So that's when I first, and the only time I ever toured with another woman. So I took her out with me, and we shared a room. Always had a single room, but it was worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but that was the only tour in my entire career where I worked with another woman.
Must have been kind of cool, finally.
It was fun. It was good. And she was good. She was a good worker. She was quick to learn, you know, and she was kind of like a kid sister. I mean, I could see a lot of me in her, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was good, you know, but then, you know, she went back to Australia and, you know, we stayed friends, but we never worked together again and stuff. And just coincidentally, I never toured with another woman, which was... And so it really was. I mean, like I say, you know, Supermech had a woman who, but she'd do like small little college gigs around London and stuff.
Right.
So that was way off my radar. I never even went to those socially, you know what I mean?
Right.
And Rainbow Lights, I had my own lighting company. I didn't, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
you know, that was, I just never saw it. Occasionally a follow spot operator, funnily enough, was the first females that I would see.
Yeah.
Would be occasionally like the mid-'80s, you know, that you'd get the odd, you know, and then a couple of stage hands, you know, like you're going into like theatres and stuff. So I think most of them came from theatre across, you know. Mm-hmm. But to actually see a presence, it really took into the 90s.
Yeah.
Really did.
Right.
And I was already living over here by then in LA, so.
I have to imagine for those women that you just mentioned, you know, to see you come in, right, from their vantage point, they're probably like, holy shit, man. who is this?
Yeah.
Or your reputation perhaps had preceded, like
That happened, yeah.
she was with them.
Yeah.
And she's like,
Yeah.
I bet that must have been pretty.
Yeah, that was interesting. I never really got to socialize with them, because of the schedule. I mean,
Well,
I
right,
was working
you're just
nonstop,
going.
and really the only women I'd see would be either girlfriends or, like you say, girls who come after the band and stuff, and
Right.
and I was still really nervous with all that, never comfortable with it, you know.
Right.
But and girlfriends were just as bad because they'd sort of befriend you just because they want to know what their old man's doing on tour.
Right,
It's
right,
like, you
right.
You need to ask him. I have no idea.
Yeah.
This is not my job.
Yeah, you know what? That's a whole other thing we didn't even hit, right? So there's the groupies, and then there's the wives and the girlfriends that probably just automatically assumed because you're female,
You'll tell them everything.
I'm gonna get a little something extra out of this one.
Yeah.
And that's a tricky spot to be in. Shit.
Yeah. I'd make that really clear right from the beginning.
Right.
It's like, oh no.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. I don't know. I go straight to bed after the show.
Right.
And read my book.
That's right. When did you move to LA?
I got transferred. TASCO transferred me over when they opened up their LA division. So that was 83. Well, they'd opened it, I think, in 81 or something. But 83 after
Wow.
Elton. Yeah, I came.
You went out with Elton?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I spent a couple of years with Elton.
Yeah.
So
Running Lights.
in his difficult period.
Right.
Yes.
Did you see the film? The recent film?
No.
Yeah.
I did though. I did actually read the first part of his book, Me, online, just because I do have a couple of chapters in there with Elton in them. So I thought, I'd best see what his take on those years were.
Right.
His take was a little calmer, but I'm sure he was told that. That's the tricky thing. It's like what you can put in writing and what you can't put in writing.
Sure. Do you watch documentaries about all these periods and performers and artists that you've worked with or films and if you do, are you sort of cockeyed at them because they're not accurate, or is it hard for you? For some people, it's hard to sort of open up those as I called them before, compartments of your life, right?
No, I open up everything. It all needs airing out.
Right.
Hopefully, I can get rid of some of it while it's open. It's lost that. Good, bye.
Right.
No, I'll watch stuff. I'll have a look and see what's going on. I mean, up until now, though, most stuff that's come out's been pretty inaccurate. You know what I mean? It's like, especially, God forbid, if it's some sort of bio on a band or something. I mean, that's just hilarious.
Right,
It's like, what the hell are they thinking?
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Yeah.
But now it's with technology and time and stuff, it's getting a little more accurate and yeah, I mean, I'll watch it. If it's no good, I'll turn it off.
Right.
But I'll usually give it a shot. Well, I kind of watched Bohemian Rhapsody a bit, and that was like a little mamby-pamby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was okay. You know what I mean? But I haven't seen the Elton one yet. I probably will at some point at 2:00 in the morning when I think, what's on?
Right.
But I wouldn't go and see it in a cinema or anything.
Yeah. Well, certainly a big thrust of that film is him dealing with all of his stuff and the effects of that.
Yeah, there was a fallout. There was a severe fallout, because it was the time when he got married and all sorts of stuff. It's like,
right.
oh
God, you're right in that zone.
God, what's going on? Stop it.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it was up till that point. Then I'm out of here. It's like you couldn't pay me enough to go back on that tour.
I mean, that's an interesting thing. I never thought of doing these. Is like, if you're with a band, it's one thing, like you said, because you're with them and you that's your view to the world.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
when you drop in, like you have so many times, you're seeing these artists on the complete different swing of wherever they may be, right? You could have gotten Elton much later when it was a whole different Disney spectacle, but you got that Elton, or you could have gotten the Yellow Brick Road Elton, right? Or the Stones. I mean, any of them.
I've got a good friend in Australia who loves Elton to death. He says he's the nicest man I've ever worked for. Have you lost your mind?
Right.
But because he came after him, when he dealt with his demons, it's just like, and that's also the hard thing where people say, well, what was your favorite band to work for? It's like, it's really doesn't have a lot to do with the music.
Right.
Not in my mind anyway. And again, picking tours, I would pick tours by the crew. Because if it's a good crew, hopefully it's going to be a good tour. The band's going to be good, because usually good crews won't work for bad bands. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Bad meaning emotionally or whatever.
Yeah.
But, so it's like, it depends when you're with them, and that's why, I love AC/DC and I love Status Quo. Those two bands. And it's just because both bands, I was at a point in their career where everything was just wonderful.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was fresh. It was wonderful. AC/DC was just starting and they were just conquering the world, and so they were just so happy and Bon was there and, so that was cool, and then like with Quo, it was, again, it was because they were at a point in their career, even though they'd started a lot earlier, they'd revamped themselves and they were just like selling just millions of albums and they were all happy with each other, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they've got their own crew, their own PA, their own lights. They were just like, woo, we're the shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And we had a ball, we just had a laugh. It was fabulous, Whereas, like a lot of the other bands, it's difficult sometimes.
Sure,
It's like Iggy Pop. Oh, what a brat.
Right.
Loved him to death. I mean, the tour was just fucking horrible. But
what years was that?
That was back in 78.
Okay.
That was his TVI tour where he had Fred Sonic Smith's band backing him. Brilliant. Fred was a darling. And Scotty Thurston, who ended up with Tom Petty for years, up until the end, But so the band was fabulous, Iggy was fabulous, but he was fighting with Bowie at the time. So it's like, oh, for God's sake, you two just fucking kiss and make up. Can we get on with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and of course, my charge was looking after Iggy on that tour, and it was just like, it was chaos. But you know what? You got to love him. I love him.
Yeah.
He was a little shit, but I loved him.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, 1978 Iggy Pop, and that's crazy. Wow. That's right in the zone, man.
Oh, yeah. So, and that's kind of, with I guess I've been fortunate enough in the 3 decades, especially the 3 covered in the book, was where I'd hit these bands like Ozzy. I did his first tour, Blizzard of Oz tour. I mean, that's history. You know what I mean? It's like, and Sharon.
Right.
But anyway, that's a whole other story. And it's like, so you do these unique moments in their worlds. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes, I do.
That to me it's priceless. It's priceless.
Yeah.
It's not always easy, God knows.
Right.
But it's still, and it's all about the show. The minute the show starts, it's all worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really is.
Yeah. We're coming a little close on time, and I want to be conscious of that. And but man, LA 83, 84, that must have been something.
Yeah, it was. So
snow-capped hills of the Hollywood Hills, a whole different, and lighting at that point must have taken a big,
very.
I mean, now you've got the money, you've got a whole different time.
Yeah, we've got all these bands that just want to look fabulous and be fabulous, and
shoulder pads,
labels, record labels, management companies—they're all willing to pay for it, so we could just create whatever we wanted.
Yeah,
moving trusses, Very lights, all sorts of stuff. I mean, it was just amazing, spinning drum kits, it was fabulous at the time.
Right.
And then I got offered my biggest lighting rig ever, which of course meant going back to Europe, and that was for a French megastar, Johnny Halliday. And it was 3,000 lamps, 64 Very lights, what was it, 200 rigging points and then another 40 dead points. like moving points, 79 moving points, 200 rigging points, and then another, I think, 50 or so dead hang points, you know. It was the biggest rig that had ever been put together, you know, tons of 5K Fresnels and fire and big moving fists and, oh, God, it's a nightmare. But we did 9 months in Paris, you know, at the Zenith, the venue there, which was brand new. We started in that brand new venue. And that was amazing, you know, so... Had to do it for the challenge. I'd already done a couple of tours with Johnny, so I knew him and his production people. But it was huge. And it never got matched because right at that time, that's when Very Lights and all moving lights started taking over. So no one would ever think to use 3,000 par cans ever again.
Right.
You know, so that was a unique point in time as well, you know, that I was kind of happy to spend the time in Paris, you know. But,
and what a unique, you know, I talk to a lot of sound engineers and whatnot, so I get the perspective of how that industry changed, but haven't yet with lighting.
Right.
And absolutely it changed. And it's changed again with LEDs and all that and the whole deal, right?
Oh, it was huge. It's huge, exactly. And that's kind of, you know, why I stopped doing lighting, at, you know, towards the end of the millennium, because it was just about to all change again. And it's like, do I want to go through this? I don't know if I want to go through this again.
So let's then jump ahead. So Y2K comes along. My wife and I were trying to remember what the hell it was called. Everyone was freaking out about. And you start to transition out. What have you done for the last 20 years?
I went to logistics.
Okay.
Actually. So what I did is I took a break, went down to Australia, and that was a family thing, and that was really ugly. And so I came back to the States and needed a change, really needed a change. So logistics, you know, I mean, Rocket Cargo was the only company out there really that was worth their salt, and they pretty much had the market cornered, but I had a lot of people I knew, you know, so I got offered a job running in the LA office for a company.
Not for Rocket.
Not for Rocket, no. And then that company, the owner went belly up, took off with all the money, and I'd put out a bunch of bands that I knew, like people who I'd known from touring. Yeah. So I had to get them back. You know, they're out all over the world, and there's airlines that are owed money and stuff, and it's like, and it's my name. You know, it's like, fuck. Wow. So I just went to the airlines. I said, I tell you what, let me bring them back, and I'll just give you all the money. You know, and from that, I got really incredible contacts in the industry. They just went, my God, you did that. You said you'd do it. We didn't know if we should trust you or not, but we did. We figured something was better than nothing, but you gave us everything. We'll give you any time you want. You can have whatever you want. You know, so I got really good rates with them. I got really good contacts with them, and ended up with my own company, which I never wanted. Wow. But just from bringing them back, you know, like people like the Chili Peppers and Pearl Jam and people like that. And they're like, and when they found out what had happened, they're like, you know, we don't want to go with someone else. I said, you know, go with Rocket. They're like, no, you did this. You know, and we appreciate you did this, so we want to stay with you. I said, there is no me. The company's gone. Right. It's just me in my living room with a phone trying to get you guys all back, and they've gone, we don't care, you know. So from that, a company was built, which was really interesting, you know. So
you still have that today?
No.
Okay.
No. No, I don't. I haven't done anything in the industry for a little while. Okay. And, you know, I had that company, and then I got sick. I got cancer. So I had to close that company down. Okay. And then I did, you know, a couple of things like putting together, you know, different projects. Like the major promoter down in Australia, Michael Chugg, was doing like a version of South by Southwest down there. So I put all that together for him. And out of that, somehow I ended up with Bill Ward from Black Sabbath right at the time where they were putting together that reunion. Yeah. Back in, which was 97, I believe. And so I got him back into Sabbath, which was something, but I took him down to Australia because I knew the promoter was going to be down in Australia. Right. And Sharon had already told the promoter, no, Bill's nowhere around. We don't know where he is. He's useless, you know, because she didn't want him back in the band. Yeah. I'm like, hi, Harvey. Look, Bill Wood.
Wow.
So I got Bill back into Sabbath. And so, stuff like that you do, and you keep your finger in doing that sort of stuff. But, yeah, and it takes a very long time to write a book.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
So I've been doing that for a few years, So thank God that's over.
So aside from the book, you're out, or you just jump in for things here and there? Keep a finger in there somewhere.
I'd never be out.
Yeah.
But it's got to be something interesting. There's a couple of things happening with a couple of, funny enough, music producers who are interested in me doing work with them, with some of the new talent that they have that they're developing, and there's another company over in England that's doing these, I can't really talk about it, but these huge ventures, that are sort of like 3D and all that sort of stuff, so there's always going to be something going on. But right now, this year's focused on the book.
What do you hope people get out of the book?
I hope they get a feeling for what talent the original roadies actually had, because I think it became, a bad word, It's like it became one of those that, I don't want to be called a roadie, I want to be called a technician, and now, they go to school for it and they learn for it, which is fabulous. But it can't teach you everything. You've got to have that. You've got to be able to become part of a crew. You've got to have a love for it. You've got to have a yearning for it. And you've got to be prepared to just go all out to make it happen. You can't sit back and go, well, I learned that if I could only do this, I could put this, and this. Otherwise, that's not right. Well, you can't work like that. Because that's not how it is. Every venue's different. Every tour's different. Every show's different, So hopefully what they'll get out of it is that roadie's not a dirty word, and that these people are the ones that actually set up the industry for what it is now.
Yeah.
They're the ones who dragged it up on their back, with really very little support, very little thank you, and very little money.
Right.
And they gave it their all, So hopefully, there's a eulogy section at the back of the book, which only addresses the people who are in the story, but it's also for everyone. But, there's thousands.
Yeah.
There's thousands of people, And again, not to put, a damper on it, but it's also the highest industry for mental health disorders.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I was going to ask you must find it refreshing is the wrong word, but good for lack of a better word. You must find it good that there are more organizations like Over the Bridge and some other folks that are doing things to try to take care of their own on the road.
Yeah,
right?
I'm affiliated.
There are meetings you can go to on the road.
Exactly.
You can do a lot of things that before was like,
Yeah, well, it was frowned upon. It was looked as a sign of weakness,
Right.
And so, if people can get over that without going too far over it to the other extreme of like, I saw a post the other day where a guy's saying, oh, there's going to be a hurricane in my hometown. I've got to leave my tour. It's like, what? You can't leave your tour. And I actually I got shit for it because I said to him, what are you talking about? Unless you can stop the wind, do your fucking job.
Right.
And I got a lot of flack for it going, you need to understand that he's emotionally needs to be blah. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake. Dude, you're on tour. It's a hurricane. What can you do?
Right. Right.
My God.
Yeah.
It's extreme. It can be extreme one way or extreme the other, but hopefully in the middle there's just a sweet spot,
Yeah.
And that sweet spot's what keeps you coming back.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna end. We're gonna end on one of my favorite ways to end these days. Hopefully, it's not getting old for people listening. So you've got the ability to get into a super fancy time machine, and you can go back. We're gonna go back, and we're gonna dial in the young Tana of 16, who's recently run away from home and is now loading the truck for this group, these guys going back to Melbourne. We'll go back that far. And they said, come on back with us. You can do this. And you get to pull her aside. You, Tana, today get to pull that Tana aside. What do you tell her?
What the hell are you thinking? But go for it, darling. Go for it.
Any advice?
Just, you've got to love it. You've got to love it. You can't be there, not the artists. You can't love the artists. You've got to love the whole environment. You've got to love the camaraderie. You've got to love the long hours. You've got to love the hard work. And you've just got to love being part of this just unique unit that just makes it all happen, It's not about you. It's really about a whole group. And as long as you bear that in mind, you can excel, absolutely, but you're still part of a group. So just make it work that way.
Tana, it is an honor to have you here with me on Roadie Free Radio, live from the Red Bull offices here in Los Angeles. And I'm very, very excited for your book to come out.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Whatever I can do to help promote that for you.
Brilliant.
And
it's due out April 25th, I believe, this year. I'll be down in Australia for the launch.
Yep.
And
you going to come east? Any East Coast book tour?
Well, it's launching in Australia. It'll be online, available online everywhere, obviously. And America's already showing interest in the book, so we'll see how it goes. Hopefully.
Okay.
And UK and Europe as well. That's the plan.
Awesome.
I could spend
going
a year
back
doing
on
this.
tour.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at you. You're going back on tour.
God help me.
That's fantastic. Great. Good for you. Congratulations.
Cheers.
All right, there you go. There you have it. That is it, friends. Thank you so much, Tana, for being on the show. It was an honor and a privilege. Good luck with the book. Guys, we're going to see you next week for episode 161. My guest is Parnelli award-winning monitor engineer Austin Schroeder, who is gearing up for his upcoming tour with Rage Against the Machine. During the week, you can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify, all as Roadie Free Radio. Check out the website, roadiefreeradio.com. Send me a note, because I do want to hear from you. That is info@roadiefreeradio.com. And my friends, in the meantime, y'all be safe out there. No roadies, no rock and roll.